Politics, it's one of those sticky topics that we either avoid or it seemingly consumes our conversations. Neither allows us to really address the issues at hand and work to find a solution. Our Lieutenant Governor, Spencer Cox, has spoken extensively about civility in politics, and we asked him how we can best be wading through this political landscape.
I would encourage people to start from a place of kindness, to get proximate, to get close to people who are different than them, to listen to each other, not listen to argue, not listen to debate, not just post your rants on Facebook and surround yourself with people that sound and believe exactly like you, but to really approach it from a place of empathy. That doesn't mean you have to change what you believe, but what it will lead to is an atmosphere where we can actually talk with each other and hopefully an atmosphere where we can get some things accomplished. Because what you'll find out, most of the time, the people that you disagree with the most actually want the same thing you do. They just have a different life experience. They have a different point of view. And once we understand that we're really trying to get to the same place, that's when we can fix problems.
After working to understand those around us, the next most important thing we can do is to get out and vote. And here with us today, we have 4 regular Utah voters to talk about why it's so important for them to cast their ballot this midterm election. And first of all, Eliana Martinez, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you.
Next, let's introduce you to Katie Clifford. Katie, welcome. Nice to have you here. Tim Isom, thank you back there.
Thanks, Doug.
And of course, we also thank Terrellyn Maloney joining us. And I understand, Terrellyn, you're a first voter.
Yes, I am.
Let's talk about that.
All righty.
Being a first-time voter, what has intrigued you particularly, or maybe repelled you, about this election?
Honestly, it's just like the political climate is just so intense that I feel the need to vote to actually get my vote and opinion out there.
Tim, for you, what is your concern, especially this year?
That people actually understand what they're voting for, why they're voting, and just all the different things that can distract them. So just really zeroing in on what they should be thinking about.
Eliana, how about for you? What's on your front burner?
I have such a visceral response to Trump and the rhetoric that he's espousing. My parents were immigrants. I remember my parents becoming citizens. I remember how proudly my father voted every election with this sticker, and I'm just trying to honor him. And I'm trying to vote according to my conscience and according to what I see the needs are for this community.
Katie, what's the hot button for you?
You know, I think I get overwhelmed with what's going on at a sort of national level and forget that most of the decisions that actually affect my daily life happen right here in Salt Lake. So for me, it's important to know what's going on with my local leaders and to make informed decisions about the people that are going to seriously affect my life, not the noise that I can kind of get freaked out about.
Back in the 1980s, Utah was like the poster child for great voting turnout. We were always either at the top or in the top 3 or certainly the top percentile. And now I've seen things that show that we're 39th in the nation. However, there are indicators this year might be the exception. For you to be able to vote, I mean, we'll get a little philosophical here and a little patriotic maybe even. What is the obligation of an American citizen and a Utah citizen to get out and vote?
I mean, that's a great question. I think when I think back to relatively recently, when women even got the chance to vote, sort of to your point, like I feel a responsibility to women who weren't able to, who didn't have a voice, that it's a waste if I don't do it. And it's a real shame for all of those women who came before me and struggled really hard to get that right.
When my grandma was born, she couldn't vote. Isn't that, it's hard for me to even imagine that. Eliana, how about for you?
I'm just proud that I'm voting. I'm proud that my parents set that example for me. I feel it's an honor and a privilege and a duty to do so. And I know that, especially like Utah, like you said, that the rates are going down a little lower. People think, well, because it's so Republican, it's so conservative, maybe I don't have a voice. But I see that things, you know, it's still important to vote. It's still important to cast your ballot, to honor those before you, and to really advocate for your community.
Tim, if you were talking to somebody who said that they weren't going to vote this year, what would you say?
Well, I have a child like that might not vote. And it concerns me. And I remember a John Lithgow clip where he, Third Rock from the Sun, where he was, I think you're nodding your head, you've seen that.
Yeah.
But, if you don't vote, you can't complain. But that's all I've got left.
Yeah.
And, but for me, if somebody said that, it says, why are you here? It says you have a responsibility. I think it's all of our responsibility to teach our children, our grandchildren, that they have to vote. I look around the world, and you mentioned, Utah being 39th. You look around the world, I think the United States is terrible in our voting percentages, and people getting out and realizing, it's so important. If you don't vote, you're giving up. To me, you're giving up, and you can't give up.
Over the last several election cycles, it's been the very young voters, the millennials, who have been just not showing up. And what would you say to a friend of yours, Terrilyn, who said, I'm not going to vote?
I just think it's like silly to not vote when you have the opportunity to, because the decisions that are made, even just like local or national, like it affects us, and I think it's just sad. And I try to like encourage all my friends to vote. I've got my boyfriend to register to vote.
Yeah.
So that's good. Like, I'm proud of that.
I try to imagine, I can remember back when I was just a little kid, people used to vote in people's homes in the neighborhood. And at my grandparents' home, that's where everybody voted, in that Forestdale neighborhood in Salt Lake. And I can remember there were a lot of people who immigrated here after World War II in that neighborhood. And I can remember you would have had to pry their death certificate out of their hand before they wouldn't vote. I remember some of those elderly folks hobbling up the steps and going in and just proudly voting, and they'd come here from another country. They had tears in their eyes over being able to vote. I would be so ashamed. I don't know how I'd ever face my grandpa if I didn't vote. Very quickly, are the propositions playing in the equation for you? And if so, is there a particular hot button proposition? And maybe, Eliana, I'll ask you at that.
Oh, no. The marijuana proposition. I have family members that are in chronic pain.
Okay.
And
All right.
I'm very conservative in my lifestyle and conservative in my views, but at the same time, because I'm a social worker, I have to be liberal and open-minded and kind of have a fair balance and really look at the big picture that our people are suffering and they really need some relief, and opiates is not the answer. It's just not. It's so addictive.
We'll very quickly go to Katie for you.
Redistricting.
Redistricting. Yeah. You may have hit one of my hot buttons on that one. Tim, how about you?
I would say, well, actually, all of them. Redistricting is a big one. The marijuana issue is big. I have a lot of people in my family, people that I know, who suffer, again, the chronic pain. That's hard to watch and not have relief from that. And I've done studies on opioids and just the dangers of addiction. So those are big.
Terrilyn, for you.
Prop 2 is definitely a big one, especially for people my age.
Yeah, absolutely.
it's-
Nobody mentioned Q1. I'll let you off the hook. All right, we are out of time. This has been a great segment. Thank you for spending this time with us on Sunday Edition. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, we will be right back with more on the program.